You ever wonder how the SEC catches you for insider trading? Well, you've come to the right place. Now, obviously, this is for educational purposes only. Do not do anything illegal. Now, what is insider trading? It's essentially when you use confidential information that your average Joe doesn't have access to make yourself filthy rich. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're the VP of portion control at Chipotle, and you just get wind on Friday that your company is going to get bought out by McDonald's. So what do? You call your cousin Vinny and say, "Hey, Vinny, I think you should buy as many Chipotle shares as possible right now, because on Friday, this thing is going to the moon." He buys $100K worth of Chipotle shares at $10 a share. But come Friday, once the news is announced to all the other schmucks, the price skyrockets, and as soon as it hits $15 a share, he sells them all. You guys pocket a cool $50K. Not bad for a day's work. But if you knew anything about options trading, you could have made over $1 million with that one trade alone. And if you don't know what options are, I'm sure some nerds in the comments will break them down for you. So, congratulations. You and Martha Stewart now have something in common. You've both committed insider trading. But unlike Martha, would you get away with it? Well, the SEC has two primary ways of catching you. One, informants, aka snitches, and two, market surveillance, aka big fat computers that detect very unlikely and suspicious trades going down. So like all criminal heists, the bigger the pot, the hotter the heat. So if you were just to take that, humble $50K trade, you'd probably fly under the radar. But if you got too greedy and bought out of the money call options, the guy on the other side of those contracts is going to be pretty pissed off when he finds out that his pockets are now $1 million lighter. And if the SEC's big data analytics tool hasn't already flagged that suspicious trade, you can bet he'll report you himself. Then the SEC is going to look at your cousin Vinny's trading account and see, oh, it's only 2 days old, and the first trade he places is a $100,000 OTM call option bet? No, that's suspicious. That'd be like going to the casino with $100,000 in cash, going straight to the roulette wheel, putting it all on 5, and it hits. The casino's security is going to swarm your ass, and they're not going to let you leave until they figure out how the hell you rigged that roulette wheel with your inside information to hit on 5. The odds of it hitting are 1 in 38. It hits. That's $3.4 and $5 million. Same logic applies to the SEC. Even if the trade hits, they're going to freeze your account and do a thorough investigation to figure out how the hell you pulled that off before they ever let you take that money out and put it on your favorite crypto shitcoin. Then they're going to subpoena your cousin Vinny's phone records and see that right before he placed that trade, who did he call? The VP of portion control at Chipotle. You're cooked. Now, believe it or not, but that Chipotle hypothetical actually happened to a senior software engineer over at Netflix who had confidential information about the number of subscribers Netflix had. So right before every earnings reports would go out, he'd phone up his brother and his best friend and have them place put it all on 5 roulette-style options bets. So it was pretty easy for the SEC's big data tools to detect those very suspicious trades that always seemed to hit right before Netflix's quarterly earnings reports would go out. They made a cool $3 million before they had to give it all back to the SEC and spend 2 years in Club Fed. Rookie mistakes. So believe it or not, but it's actually extremely difficult to prove insider trading. And the SEC rarely has a smoking gun piece of direct evidence like a text, email saying, "Hey, madam, let's commit insider trading on Friday. You're down." In fact, if you looked at Martha Stewart's sentencing report, she was technically never found guilty for insider trading. She pleaded down to lesser charges like obstruction of justice because they were a lot easier for the prosecution to prove. Most times the evidence they get on you is circumstantial evidence, like the Netflix engineer where he didn't come out right and say, "Hey, I'm going to be committing insider trading." No, you have to put the pieces of the crime puzzle together using your noggin to deduct what actually happened. So the jury's going to see the phone calls, the trades placed right before the quarterly earnings report would go out. He used to work at Netflix. He's still getting inside information. And that's why they got convicted. It was an open and shut case. The circumstantial evidence was simply overwhelming. You see, the SEC has a limited budget to go after bad actors, so they mostly focus on low-hanging fruit. The median profits they file against is about $58,000. So it's not really in their incentive to go after the big boys where they might not see a return versus going after the easy pickings, klutzy criminals. Think about it. The SEC's budget is just over $2 billion a year. Chase Bank spends $14 billion a year on IT alone. Who do you think is going to outmaneuver who? In fact, the CEO of Chase Bank back in the 1920s, Mr. Albert Wiggin, committed such diabolical insider trading against his own company that he was one of the main reasons the SEC spawned in the first place and insider trading became illegal. That's right, you heard me correct. Insider trading wasn't even illegal back in the day. It was one of the main reasons for the stock market crash that led to the Great Depression. I mean, if you think today's Wall Street crooks are bad, those OG bankers make them look like a bunch of kindergarteners. So let me set the scene for you. It's Black Thursday. The Wall Street crash of 1929 is underway. You're on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Everybody's losing their minds. Stocks are plummeting. Total financial collapse is imminent. But then you look to the east. Who is that? The trumpets blare. It's Mr. Wiggin riding in with his flank of other Wall Street bigwigs who come to save the day, and they start deploying their capital to pay above market prices to halt the crash in its tracks. You look up. Oh, Mr. Wiggin, my hero. But Mr. Wiggin was no hero. In fact, he was the villain all along. You see, Wiggin saw the writing on the wall, and while he's playing Mr. Goody Two-Shoes to the rest of the public world, right? Behind closed doors, he was secretly shorting all of his personal shares of Chase Bank, aka betting that the stock would go down, which he knew, and he made off like a bandit. So while everybody else had to line up for the soup lines to get their slop, Mr. Wiggin was counting his $60 million he made off of everybody else's misfortune. Sound familiar? It happened almost 80 years later. Now, of course, all the other Wall Street bigwigs were doing the exact same thing, but remember, the tallest poppy always gets the chop. Of course, he never went to prison or even paid a fine for that matter. In fact, he didn't even have to pay any taxes on the $60 million because, get this, he bought the shares with the Canadian Shell Corporation. I mean, talk about an absolute degen of the highest order. So what was his punishment? Well, he had to take an early retirement from the public view and take all his millions to his mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut to live out the rest of his days. The tragedy. Now, all that's not to say that the SEC never takes down whales or billionaires. They definitely do. I mean, it's every Fed's dream to catch the big kahuna. But think about it. They got a limited budget. So they're gonna go for the easy layups and get those easy dubs so they can keep getting funding. So it's a lot easier for them to go after the klutzy criminals like the Netflix engineer who give them their case on a silver platter. So what have we learned today, class? If you're gonna commit insider trading, don't be a dunce about it. And if you want to learn even more and how you can make a decent chunk of change yourself, you know where to go. Happy conning.